Hey everybody, Qroo here. Welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about why it's beneficial to learn verbs, not just as isolated words, but in set phrases, which is not how most people typically begin learning Spanish verbs. Most of us start with individual words, right? Like tomar, to take, dar, to give, hacer, to make or to do, which is fine. But we're really selling ourselves short because when students who follow that method have to translate sentences like these, they tend to do a literal word-for-word translation. Take a look at the screen. I need to make a decision. I'll typically hear people say, necesito hacer una decisión, to make a decision, right? I'm going to take steps to fix the situation. Voy a tomar pasos, take steps, para arreglar la situación. It makes sense to me. I'll hear people come up with all kinds of things for this, like me hace sentido or hace sentido para mí. Although I hear translations like that from students all the time, all of those translations are incorrect. And the reason they are is that Spanish doesn't always mirror our English. That's why it's important to learn verb phrases. For example, in Spanish, we don't make decisions, we take decisions. And we don't take steps, we give steps. And things don't make sense, they have sense. The correct way to translate those things all involve verbs that most students tend to learn pretty early on because they are so common and useful, right? But if they were only learning them as individual words, you can see how mistranslations like this are possible and, well, even probable. I'm not saying you should only have verb phrases on your word list. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, you're going to have a lot of verbs just by themselves. For example, comer, to eat. I would just have that on my word list. Pretty clear cut, right? But in the case of the mega verbs, as I often call them, dar, to give, tomar, to take, poner, to put, echar, to throw, and tener, to have, wow, there are tons of verb phrases just using those verbs. So you should include those verb phrases on your list. When I was learning Spanish, I would typically set up my word list like this. I would have my main verb, tomar, and then under that, I would include my verb phrases like tomar bebidas, to drink. That would remind me that that's a way that people can say to drink. And I might also include some sample sentences like, ¿Quieres algo de tomar? Or ¿Quieres algo para tomar? Do you want something to drink? Just to help me remember it. One of the phrases I had on there right from the beginning is one of the ones we just talked about, tomar decisiones or tomar una decisión, to make decisions. But I would remember it as literally to take decisions so I wouldn't forget it. Es importante tomar buenas decisiones. It's important to make good decisions. Another verb you should absolutely have on your word list is dar, to give. There are tons of verb phrases and expressions with dar. One of the ones we talked about today is dar pasos, to take steps, right? But literally in Spanish, they give steps. Another really common expression with dar is dar a luz, like to give to light, and it means to give birth. I could do an entire lesson with just verb phrases with dar because there are a ton of them. And I mean, at some point maybe I will, I don't know. I don't want to promise anything, but I might. All right. Another mega verb that you probably already have on your list is tener, to have. And chances are you're already starting to learn some different verb phrases with tener. Some of the first ones people typically learn are like tener calor, I'm hot, literally I have heat, or tener frío. You're going to be using that with people and animals, but not things. So you might want to specify that on your word list, you know, in parentheses, people and animals, and then maybe have some examples showing, you know, how you would say that something, you know, is hot or cold. For example, the stove is hot. La estufa está caliente. Or the fish is cold. El pescado está frío. A verb phrase that should definitely be on your list with tener is the one we talked about earlier, tener sentido, to have sense. But when we translate it in English, it's like, it makes sense. And in parentheses, you might want to include like para mí, for me, para ti, whatever, to help you remember. No tiene sentido, it doesn't make sense, or literally, it doesn't have sense. No tiene sentido para mí, it doesn't make sense to me or for me. I've always found it helpful to remember literal translations from Spanish to English in my head so I can remember the Spanish. Like I would remember this like, okay, it has sense for me. That's how I'm thinking about it. I have heat, I have cold. There are tons of expressions with tener. That can be a video also of its own. So let's talk about another mega verb, poner, to put. Definitely should be on your list. I did a video this week answering a question that I was getting from several viewers about putting, something in food or drink. Like when you're like, oh, this is delicious drink, what did you put in it? Although it's not a verb phrase, it is a construction that's going to require you to use the indirect object pronoun le. So I would add it to my word list like this: poner, and then like le in parentheses with food and drinks. And then I would include an example: ¿Qué le pusiste a la salsa? What did you put in the sauce? Another one that I had on my word list early on using poner was poner huevos, or to lay eggs, or literally to put eggs. And it's not like I talked about, things laying eggs a lot, but I just thought it was so odd that I had to put it on there. Las gallinas ponen huevos todos los días. The chickens lay eggs every day. Actually, the hens lay eggs every day. There are so many useful verb phrases with poner that your list can get long pretty quickly. I liked poner a prueba, to put to the test, poner en práctica, to put into practice. Those mirror English pretty closely, so they were easy to remember and easy to work into my Spanish. Another one I always thought was useful was poner fin a. Remember those three words, to put an end to something. Tenemos que poner fin a esto. We have to put an end to this, whatever this is. While you're studying Spanish, if you happen to come across a phrase that you think is useful, but it doesn't mirror English exactly, that's the kind of thing you want to put on this list. One that made my list early on was poner la mesa, to set the table, but literally to put the table. Now, when I see something like that, immediately I think, okay, that's how you say set the table. How would you say clear the table? Is that different too? And yes, it typically is. So right after it on my word list, I would have levantar la mesa, to clear the table, or literally to lift the table. This video is already getting a little long for my liking, but I really can't leave until I talk a little bit about echar, which means to throw. And it's not typically a verb that beginning students really, focus on, because they're like, echar, to throw. That's not that useful to me. I like tirar, to throw. But one thing that sets echar apart from like tirar is that it is used in so many expressions in Spanish that you absolutely have to learn it. Echar de menos, to miss someone or something, but not like to miss an event, but like, oh, I really miss Maria, that kind of stuff. Maria echa de menos a Juan. Maria misses Juan. Oh, poor Maria. Another one that I really like that you'll probably hear me use in videos where I'm speaking more Spanish is this one: echar un vistazo a. It's like to go take a look at something, Echamos un vistazo a los ejemplos. Let's take a look at the examples. Another one you might find useful is echar a perder. You want to remember it in three words like that so you don't miss anything. It means to spoil something or ruin something. Si no cuidas bien tus zapatos nuevos, if you don't take good care of your new shoes, podrías echarlos a perder en poco tiempo. You could ruin them in no time. You'll see this used with the reflexive when you're saying that something spoiled or went bad. So I put that as a separate line item on my list so I wouldn't mix those two up. I would have echarse a perder, to spoil, to go bad. Dejé la comida afuera demasiado tiempo y se echó a perder. I left the food out too long and it spoiled, it went bad. Well, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it, maybe even picked up a couple verb phrases today. I hope you did, because that'd be awesome. And if you liked the video, do me a favor and give it a thumbs up. And until next time, hasta luego.